Meet Seth Goldman. We're sure you've heard of the business he founded, Honest Tea. Cherished everywhere, Honest Tea and its affiliate Honest Kids was acquired by Coca-Cola and has sold over 1 billion units. Since then, Goldman has founded numerous companies, including PLNT Burger, Just Iced Tea, and Bethesda Green, with a focus on sustainability and giving back to the community. Today, we visited Mr. Goldman and interviewed him to learn more about his long and experience-rich journey.
So, to start off, you founded numerous businesses in the food and beverage industry, such as PLNT Burger, Honest Tea, and Just Iced Tea. What sparked your interest in this field?
Well, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been interested in creating things, and I came on food accidentally. I was working in an investment company here in Bethesda, and I was just sort of thinking, what's a good idea, that I could get excited about? I went running one day. After the run, I went to a beverage cooler, and I looked at all the choices, and even though there were hundreds of options, I said they're all the same. They all have the same sweetness profile, and we should try to do something about it. And so I didn't have any experience in food or beverage, but I was curious enough that I got in touch with my former professor from the Yale School of Management and said, when I was your student, we had talked about this idea of a less sweet drink. And that was kind of prompted me, that early conversation, plus seeing that market space, made me think it's worth trying to do something about this.
So you saw an opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah, when we say I was thirsty.
Okay, that's great. So we noticed that you gradually shifted job fields from areas such as sales and even press secretary all the way to the trillion-dollar food and beverage industry. So what influenced you to make this change, and what were the steps you took to?
Yeah, for me, it was always doing mission-driven work. So I've always worked for companies or organizations that have a cause, that's something I can believe in, and try to think about what's the role I can play in those companies that can have the biggest impact. So, as a press secretary, you're basically doing marketing for a message. When I worked for an investment company that had a whole policy around being socially responsible. They wouldn't invest in tobacco or companies with bad environmental records, and so trying to spread that message. And that was sometimes it was marketing, sometimes that was sales. And of course, as an entrepreneur, you have to handle all dimensions of the work. So for me, it really starts with what's an idea or a cause I believe in that I can get excited about, and then what's the role I can play where I can have the biggest impact or the best impact, right? I may have to think about where my skills are going to be most effective.
Mm-hmm. So building a reputation for yourself and overcoming customer skepticism is cited as one of the top challenges for young entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So how did you overcome these obstacles when you were a young and new entrepreneur?
Yeah, so the way we started Honest Tea was very small, right? We started only in 17 Whole Food stores. And basically I got into every one of those stores and we gave out samples. We had, these were some of our earliest bottles, and this was some of the thermoses I poured samples out of, and basically just kept giving samples to people and explaining the product. And not everyone liked it, but enough people liked it, they would buy it. And by the end of the summer of 1998, when we launched, we had become the best-selling tea in those 17 Whole Food stores. And that was enough proof for us and confidence for us to say, okay, now we can go to other Whole Food stores, or we can go to other stores beyond Whole Foods. And so you have to start somewhere. You're going to start with one customer and win them over, and then another customer, and then maybe a store, and then another store. So you just can't expect to go launch nationally all of a sudden. You have to sort of start with some success and build on that.
In the first 5 years of business for Honest Tea, you raised a significant amount of money that propelled the business exponentially. So how would you go about getting funding and investors today?
Well, basically the same way we did it back then. I mean, you have to say, here's the reason to believe this is worth investing in. And the reason you would want to invest is because you think it can grow and it can become valuable. Mm-hmm. And the way you prove that is to show that it sells. So the fact that we'd become the best-selling tea in 17 Whole Food stores, back in that summer of 1998 was a great place to start, because if we can succeed in 17 stores, here's what the business looks like if we go national. And here's what the business looks like if we go beyond Whole Foods and we go to Giant and Safeway and all of these other opportunities. And that's what's been so fun with Just Iced Tea now, when we got investors, much more quickly because we had demonstrated our success. And then again, we've now become the best-selling tea in the natural foods industry. And so now we go to the other retailers like Safeway and Target and CVS. We can say we're the best-selling tea in the natural foods industry, and we have a reason to believe we'd succeed in your stores as well.
So you touched on this earlier, but the businesses you founded, the work you do, it all moves towards sustainability. So could you speak to the importance of purpose in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, for me, I always think of myself as really more of a non-profit entrepreneur. I mean, we try to make for-profit businesses, but I think of myself as an activist. And so for me, one of the things I care about, one is, obviously what's happening to our planet. How do we redirect the impact we have on the climate and on the planet? And one of the biggest drivers of our environmental footprint is what we eat and how it's produced and how it's grown. And so moving to organic is really important. And so for me, we talk about trying to democratize organic, to try to make organic food available everywhere, not just on the coast or not just in wealthy neighborhoods, but everywhere. And then another thing that's really important is the health of the consumer. So this product, because it has so much less calories than you'd see in the typical soft drink, if we can move people to drinking these kind of products, it's going to be better for their health, and that'll help reduce, we have an obesity crisis in this country. People's life expectancy in this country is much lower. It's for the wealth our country has, we have just one of the lowest life expectancies. So we need to be able to provide people with support people moving to healthier lifestyles. And then another key piece that we accomplish with this business is helping create economic opportunity in the developing world. So we source these teas from India, China, Mozambique, and especially as we really leaned into Mozambique, we see there's an opportunity to really make an economic impact in this community. Mm-hmm. It's the province where we source our tea from has a life expectancy of 54.6 years, which is really low. I mean, I know the U.S. is bad, but it's in the high 70s. Yeah. And so when we buy our tea, it's through a fair trade certification. And that means that with every pound of tea we buy, a portion of the money goes back to these communities that we can invest in. We're actually working to build a health clinic in this community in Mozambique that'll really dramatically have an positive impact on the health of that community.
So you actively participate in a multitude of companies. How do you manage to fit all of this into your schedule and life?
Yeah, it's funny, and I think back to when I was in high school, I was doing a lot of things too. So I did track and wrestling. I was in the high school musical and in the singing groups. I was in the student government and in the debate. And so sometimes you could say, oh, that's a student. And of course I did my studies too, right? I did some grades. So you could look at that and say, well, that sounds like a very unfocused way to live. But what I was really doing, and I didn't know it at the time, was multitasking. I was doing multiple things. I had to manage my schedule. I had to be able to direct attention to something and focus. And they didn't have social media then, so I wasn't like I was distracted doing other things. Get one thing done, go do the next thing. And so that's what I'm doing now, multitasking. So, over the course of a day, I'll have conversations with my sales leader, my marketing leader. I'll have a conversation with the CEO of Beyond Meat, where I'm chair of the board, or the CEO of PLNT Burger, where I'm chair of that board. And so being able to handle a lot of different tasks at once is a skill and a discipline that you can develop. And it does mean really being present. And I think one of the things we mentioned all those things, my biggest enterprise and what I'm most proud of is my family. And so one of the things I've always really been determined to do is that when I'm with my family, I'm not doing business. And so I'm not talking to my son or my wife, but sort of scrolling through my phone. You've got to, where you are, you've got to be present and focused. You don't serve anyone well when you're distracted, doing something else.
What were the differences in founding your nonprofit, Bethesda Green, to your for-profit businesses like PLNT Burger and Honest Tea?
Yeah. So with Bethesda Green is interesting. We were looking at what was going on in this community. It's grown extremely quickly over the past 10 years. Going back now, we're actually, so Bethesda Green was founded in 2007, so we're now 17 years in, which is pretty wild. But we were looking at this community growing really quickly and not having a mindset around sustainability. And so whether it was the recycling that was going on or the lack of trees being planted, or businesses sort of growing here but not having an ethos to them, I said, well, if we can help really instill that in this community, that'll be important. And I remember back when I was launching Honest Tea in 1998, and I was talking to investors, and I remember an investor telling me, well, you got this tea you're growing in Bethesda, Maryland, but that's not a green community. Why don't you put, you can set up a P.O. box in Vermont or New Hampshire and say your tea is from there. And I'm like, well, that's not honest, first of all. But also, why shouldn't Bethesda be a place where there's a conscious, business community? And so that our effort to build that. One of the things that's different about Bethesda Green is that we don't have the ambition to become a national brand. I mean, it is a local organization. And so the budget and the scope of it is local, right? So I build these brands. They only make sense when they have national reach. That's the only way you get margin. That's the only way you get sort of to have that kind of impact we want to have in the community. With Bethesda Green, we don't need to raise tons of money. We need to raise some money, but we can raise enough money to support the mission of the organization, and we hire good people and let them do their thing.
So in terms of what you mentioned about businesses having a role to play in sustainability, and I'm sure you're familiar with the ESG principles.
Yeah.
So do you believe that all businesses need to and should change their policies and goals to accustom to the ESG principles, because we need it now more than ever?
I would say every business should be thinking about their impact that they have on the things we talked about, on the consumer, on the communities they source from, and on the environment. And a lot of them don't. And so, each business sort of looks at it in a different way. And I think an important distinction is there's many businesses that they may be successful and then they give away their profits to charity. And that's one way to do it. But if the product itself they're selling has a negative impact on the consumer, then to me that doesn't excuse what they're, the fact they're giving away donations, that doesn't excuse the core business.
So what are your opinions on dropping out of school to pursue a business and entrepreneurship?
I wouldn't recommend that. Certainly not out of high school. I would say part of what you get out of school is the whole social interaction with people too. But I think rarely is there a window in time that's so narrow that if you wait a few years, you're going to miss it. So maybe you go back to Facebook and you could say that Mark Zuckerberg had to leave Harvard at the time because he had an idea that the marketplace was ready for. But in general, being an entrepreneur isn't just about striking at a particular moment. It's about really capitalizing on all the opportunities you see. And when we launched this business, it was not a beverage company at all. It was originally a planet-friendly snack food company. And then the beverage opportunity fell in our lap. If we had sort of said we are a planet-friendly snack company and we've got to jump now, we may not have had the skills or discipline to realize this other opportunity. So part of being an entrepreneur is being nimble. And part of the way you get to be nimble is developing the knowledge and skills and experience that you get in school. It's not just about being a one-dimensional way to access an opportunity.
So the stuff you learn in school and economics and business, finance, all that stuff is so crucial for business owners.
Yeah, and it's also interacting with people. It's building a network of people. So for example, when I got that opportunity at Whole Foods back in 1998, it turned out that someone in marketing at Whole Foods used to go to the Yale School of Management. And so even though I didn't know him when I was there, that helped open the door for me to have a conversation.
Yeah. So what is some advice that you would give to young and aspiring entrepreneurs who wish to pursue an interest similar to yours?
I would say, get started, try some things out. So if there's a homecoming in school, print some shirts that are fun and creative and different, and try selling those. That's being an entrepreneur. It's you get the chance to sell, you get the chance to market, you get the chance to sort of understand the margins and make sure it makes financial sense.
That'll be all.
Great, good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for
taking the
talking to
time
you
for
guys.
us.
Yeah.